Did you have the same hat through the entire run of the series?
Once in a while they'd have me wear a different hat. But basically, it's a brown hat, what they call, oh shoot, I can't think of the name of it now. But it had arrowheads on the headband, and that was my idea. And it was an identifying characteristic. And that was only on the brown hat, not on the white one or black or any other color hat that I might wear.
What about the gun? Was it the same gun?
Same gun.
And do you have that hat and gun now?
No.
What, you know what happened to them?
Yeah, gave them away.
Really?
Yeah.
So you did have them at one time?
I did have them at one time, yeah.
That's great. What do you have in common with the character of Cheyenne?
I think I had a great deal in common with him. I liked the outdoors. And I had the tendency to want to take up for the underdog. And I tried to be fair with other people. I think a lot of that, you know, my mom taught me. And I think, and Cheyenne was looking for something, and he hadn't found where he wanted to put his roots down. Hadn't found the woman that he felt that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. And of course, if they wanted Cheyenne to continue, he had to continue to feel that way about it. He had to ride off into the sunset. No, I was amazed when I began to see the Cheyennes that I'd done, some I'd never seen before. I made them but didn't see them. But
what did your were your parents around to see you become as famous as you were?
yes.
And what did they think?
Oh, they were proud as punch. Sometimes it got a little embarrassing. Because I know my dad, you know, if somebody didn't know who I was, he proceeded to tell them. And I said, Dad, don't do that. I said, if they don't know who I am, they may find out one day. And if they don't, that'll be all right too. But I said, you know, I'd rather he didn't bring it up. But he was proud, and I could see why he felt that way.
How about your mom?
Yeah, Mom was very definitely proud of me. I know I had went back to Hartford. They wanted to have a Clint Walker Day back there, so I went back to Hartford. I was doing Cheyennes then, and Mom got dressed up and went with me, and of course she had a lot of people talking to her, and I'm sure she enjoyed that very much. And it's funny, they had me on a fire truck. They had a big parade, and the streets were lined with people, and it started to pour down rain. And I'm standing up on top of this fire truck and getting soaking wet. And my first thought was to get off the fire truck and get out of the rain. And then I saw that the people weren't going to leave. They were going to stand out in the rain, watch the parade. And I thought, well, least I can do is stay with them, which is what I did. But yeah, my folks were very proud of me.
What's your approach to acting?
My feeling is each one of us, every individual in the world has got one thing to sell that can't be duplicated, and that's his own individuality. There's only there'll only be one of us in this whole world. And I think rather than trying to be another John Wayne or another Marlon Brando or another whoever, work with what you've got. Be yourself. It's your individuality that you've got to sell. But learn everything that you can about anything. Learn some different languages. You never know when that'll be the thing that'll get you the part that you might not have got otherwise. Anything you can learn and add. It's kind of like a carpenter with a toolbox. The more tools you got in your box, the more jobs you can do, and the better job you can do on what you do. But I recommend heartily, don't try to be like anybody else. Make that flower that is you bloom, and give the world your individual personality, because if we all have talents of various kinds, and if you've got the talent to be an actor or an actress, and that's what you want to do, then go to work and try to be the best that you can possibly be. And this is why I always admire the real professionals out there, the Vincent Prices, the Clark Gables and Spencer Tracy's, and all those people that do such fantastic jobs as actors, but they're unique. They're themselves, and that's what sells.
A lot of shows had a large cast or had ensembles. Cheyenne's character was a loner. Do you think that the format of the show, where it was almost like an anthology, you were the character that was always present, but every show had a whole different setting, different characters, you move on. Do you think, A, that the audience liked that, and B, for you, was it stimulating to have like new actors?
Oh, absolutely.
Almost every episode to work with?
Absolutely, because I usually learn something, it was so fantastic to be able to work with the John Carradines and the Jack Elams and the big boy Williams and Marie Windsors and so many people that I'd seen, the Bob Wilkies and the, as far as the heavies were concerned, Big Mickey Simpson and Leo Gordon, for example, who I did quite a few shows with. And that's what I mean. Each one let that thing that was him or her bloom, rather than trying to be like somebody else.
Did the audience come to expect certain things, certain consistent things to happen in a typical episode?
Oh, I think so. They expected me to win most of the time, and if I got in a fight, they felt that, I very possibly could win that fight. And because I was in good physical shape and I could handle myself pretty well there, and which is one reason I did most of my fight scenes. There wasn't anybody else that looked enough like me that they could do them for me.
Did stunt guys ever have to fill in for you, or did?
Oh yeah, I had like Clyde Howdy, who was my stand-in, but when we did Yellowstone Kelly in Flagstaff, when the Indians killed Eddie Burns and the cabin was burning on fire, and I saw the smoke, and I rush up and I look down in the valley where the cabin is and see it burning. I'm supposed to gallop down the hillside at a pretty good speed, and there was lava all over the place, lava rocks, and they were sharp, and if you ever fell on them, they could tear you up pretty badly. So they wouldn't let me ride down the hill. They had Howdy do it, and he made it okay. They had a thing in Fort Dobbs where we're in the raging waters, and supposedly I swim out and pull Virginia to safety. And they shot a scene. There was a guy by the name of Tom Hennessy, who did doubling, and he doubled me there because that water was fast. As a matter of fact, one of the horses drowned, and he got a tooth or two knocked out. He got swept into some trees or driftwood, whatever. But yeah, if it was something where I could really get badly hurt, it just made sense for them to have a stunt double do it. But as I was saying about the third Cheyenne I did, I had to, on the back lot at Warner Brothers, I had to chase down an Indian. He's on horseback, and we're running, and I've got to catch up with him, and then they put a metal stirrup on the right side of the horse because I had to go off on that side, and I could kind of push myself off with my leg and take the Indian off the horse, and we both fall over the other side into the sand. Well, we managed to do that okay, and we'd already rehearsed how the fight was going to be once we hit the sand. Well, it didn't quite work out. They got it in one take, but there were areas where I was supposed to have my back to the camera, and I wouldn't let the Indian turn me that direction. And when the scene was all over with, he said, "Clint," why wouldn't you let me turn you, do it the way we rehearsed it? And I just turned around. When I had hit the sand with him, my trousers had ripped from the crotch clear up to the belt in the back, in that seam in the trousers. So I just turned around where you could see that the trousers were ripped, and of course everybody had a good laugh. But that was, after that, those kind of scenes, they would have had a double for me. But rarely did they ever double me. And then I had the scene out in Vasquez Rocks. Now, I could have done that. In fact, I love to do that kind of thing where I go over a cliff on a rope and go down the rope. But they had a stunt man do it. And I had to be careful because if the stuntmen were trying to make money. More stunts they did, the more money they made. And if I interfered too often, they wouldn't be very happy with Clint Walker.
How did you use your size to help the viewers believe that you could do the heroic things that Cheyenne needed to do?
Well, because I knew I could do a lot of them. Like if I had to come down a cliff on a rope, I knew I could do that.
And you think the viewers picked up on that? They could sense that?
Oh, I think so, to some degree, yeah.
What did you do?
There were very few Cheyennes I did where I didn't have fight scenes. A lot of them in the saloons or whatever. And almost every Cheyenne I made, I'd lose a little blood somewhere along the line. Maybe I was off my mark a little, or the other guy was off, and maybe he'd hit me, and I'd have a bloody nose or whatever. Or you pick up splinters on the barroom floor, or when they hit you over the head with a chair. I know one time I went for the gun, and I caught my wrist on the hammer of the gun, and it kind of gave me a pretty good gash there. But that was just, when you're doing that kind of stuff, those barroom scenes, you're hitting each other over the head with balsa wood chairs or with bottles that are made out of that, like a rock candy. I forget what they call it. And the same way with window panes. When you went through a window pane, it was made out of that rock candy. But you could still get cut on it.
How long was a typical shooting day? It sounds like it was very physical and probably
You
tiring.
go to work, we would go to work at 7 in the morning, get your makeup, and put your wardrobe on and take a look at the script. And they won that first shot in the can by 8 o'clock. Then we would work all day long. We'd take off. I'm trying to remember. It was an hour, a half hour for lunch. Must have been an hour, because a lot of times for lunch, in back of Warner's, they've got that Saddleback Mountain. And I and my stand-in, sometimes one other guy, we'd climb that mountain during our lunch hour. And then come back down. I'd come back and clean up a little, get my makeup redone, and usually what I ate was a handful of nuts and raisins and sunflower seeds. That was my lunch.
Did you have any downtime in a shooting day, or were you pretty much in every scene?
No, I was pretty much in every scene. L.Q. Jones started out with me in about the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then he decided he didn't want to be a sidekick, which I don't blame him. He turned out to be a very fine actor in his own right, and made a pretty good name for himself.
He played Smitty in those early episodes. What was the relationship between Cheyenne and Smitty at the beginning?
Oh, just buddies, I guess.
And Smitty would travel with Cheyenne?
Yeah. Yeah, but he was kind of the comic relief, and he was a good one. If you know L.Q. Jones, that's where he shines.
When he left, did it change the format very much when he left the show?
No, it didn't seem to. I guess maybe they simply wrote the scripts not to include him, and they didn't try to replace him. I think what happened, they were sort of thinking in terms of some of the other shows where all the heroes had a sidekick that was kind of a comic sidekick, and then they found maybe that I could I could make it on my own. I didn't have to have a sidekick. I don't know. But I know they never tried to bring anybody else in. And got to where, I was Cheyenne. And no sidekicks. And of course, I got to work with a lot of different people, from Dennis Hopper to as I say, Jackie Hillman, and a lot of other very well-known actors and actresses. Marie Windsor was fantastic. I did quite a few Cheyennes with her, and Bob Wilkie, and but gosh, I worked with a lot of wonderful people, and I'd watch them, and I'd learn little things from them. I worked with Arthur Honeycutt. Arthur would go around sucking on an orange an awful lot of the time. Very fine actor. It was great when we had him in a picture. And I think that was about the first time I worked with him, about my third Cheyenne, and somebody said, boy, Arthur sure likes oranges. And the guy looked at me and smiled. He said, he also likes vodka.
Let me ask you about some of the actors, some of that you mentioned, and just maybe give me just a quick quick thought about them, or how they were to work with, or your impression of them, bad or good. Let's start with James Garner. Did he guest on Cheyenne, and did you guested on Maverick?
No, I never guested on Maverick that I can remember.
Okay.
But he did guest on either 3 or 4 Cheyennes. But Jim was a fine actor. He always did a good job.
Did he play Maverick on Cheyenne or a different character?
No. I think he played 2 military parts, and then he played a heavy in the one with Angie Dickinson that we did. And he was the bad guy. And he did a great job.
Oh, I had read that you played Cheyenne on an episode of Maverick, but that's not.
If I did, I've forgotten it.
Because occasionally Warner Brothers shows would, they would have the characters would cross over. I think sometimes. And what about Dennis Hopper?
Oh, Dennis. Oh, what a fantastic little guy. I worked with him a number of times. I think he did either 2 or 3 Cheyennes. But Dennis was Dennis, and there was nobody else like him. And he had that certain something that made him a standout.
Angie Dickinson.
Oh, Angie was a good actress, very pretty girl. Had a good voice. And of course, she proved all that. She went on to, make quite a name for herself.
Michael Landon.
Michael was quite a gymnast. He was very physically active. Anything physical, he did very well.
Jack.
And of course, he went on. All the guys on Bonanza, Lauren Green and Michael Landon and Parnell Roberts and
Dan Blocker.
They all worked on Cheyennes before they did Bonanza.
Jack Elam, who you mentioned.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Well, I tell you, there's nobody like Jack but Jack. With that goofy eye of his, that he really turned a lemon into lemonade there. But Jack was, when you got to know him, he was a sweetheart. And funny guy. And he'd do funny things on the set. I know one winter, he came to work and he was coughing and carrying on like he had a terrible cold. And I think most people thought that he did have the way he sounded. But there was a little girl that I think she was a stand-in for somebody, and she was new and on the set. And what Jack was doing, he went and got a cup of hot water, and he'd hide it behind his back. And he was talking like he really had a really bad cold. And he'd sneeze. It sounded very realistic. And he'd get up close to this girl, talking to her deliberately. And what he'd do is dip his fingers in that cup of hot water, and he'd sneeze, and he'd flip that hot water on her. And she thought that she was really getting the business. And she finally grabbed an umbrella and opened it up between her and Jack. And then finally she figured out what he was doing. But that was Jack. He would do things like that. And he'd gamble. This guy, you never wanted to gamble with him because it seemed like no matter what, if you pitched pennies with him, he'd always win. If a fly lit somewhere, he'd say, I'll bet you that when that fly takes off, it'll be whatever direction it would be. And if you bet against him, he'd win.
He played a lot of villains in his career. But
yes,
on Cheyenne, did he play a friend of yours? Toothy Thompson, or is that just one of the characters he played?
Well, he played a Russian something another elitist, I guess you'd call him. He was a high echelon Russian, and he, boy, he did a great job with coming in with the way he talked. You really thought he was a Russian diplomat of some kind. But anyway, it was a picture that he did, and he made the mistake of shooting an Indian, and finally he does the right thing, goes out with his sword to fight the Indians. Of course, they kill him off. But later I did a thing called Night of the Grizzly, and we wanted a lovable handyman, and I recommended Jack. And Night of the Grizzly was my original idea, and I helped to write it. But they said, "Oh, Jack Elam, are you kidding? He's the bad guy. He's the villain." And I said, "Listen, I know Jack, and he will make a very lovable handyman." And I said, "Trust me on this one." So they gave him the part. He did a fantastic job. I'll never forget, we had a little Victoria Myrink, which is supposed to be my daughter, and she's about 4 years old, something like that, 4 or 5 years old. And Jack has got a black beard he's grown, and I hire him to help me do certain things, and he and Victoria are laying in the grass watching a black woolly caterpillar as he crawls along in the grass, and Jack's got his chin on his hand and watching that caterpillar, and of course little Victoria's immolating him, so she's got her chin on her hand watching the caterpillar, and then she turns to Jack and she said, she said, "He looks kind of like you," because of the black beard that Jack had. Jack looked at Victoria and they looked back at Caterpillar. He kind of does, don't he? But I thought that was the cutest scene. But he had some real funny scenes with Nancy Culp, and he just did a great job.
Did your height ever pose a challenge working opposed to other actors, especially women? If you towered over somebody, did they ever have to stand on apple boxes and things, or did you just play like it played?
There might have been a few times when somebody had to stand on something, or I don't remember ever walking in any ditches. But I think if we had scenes like that and that was a problem, maybe I'd sit down on something, or I don't know.
How many days did it take to shoot an episode of
6 days. We had to shoot them in 6 days, and as I told you, we'd start at 7, have your makeup on and your wardrobe, and the first shot in the can by 8, and usually we worked till 8, 9 o'clock at night, and sometimes later than that, and if we had to finish a picture, on the 6th day, we'd work till 1, 2 o'clock the next morning to finish it up. I know we did, we were on a stage, supposedly, I think it was in the wintertime, and on stage 19, and they had some wagons circled in there, and because of the Indians. And then we see the Indians approaching. And I said, "Don't shoot." And I'm supposed to say, "Don't shoot." They come in peace, carrying their guns butt first, which it meant carrying the butt of the rifle to where the rifle was over their shoulder, I guess. Anyway, everybody was tired. And I said the lines, and everybody started laughing, and I couldn't figure out why. Till I found out what I said was, "Don't shoot. They come bearing their butts first." But on occasion, with those long hours, everybody gets tired, and they kind of lose energy. That includes the cast and the crew, and they begin to kind of lose a little something there. So every now and then we'd do something to get everybody to have a good laugh and kind of re-energize everybody and then get back in it. I know I had a scene where I was the sheriff, and I come in and I've got a coat and in the hotel room, and I take off the coat and put it in, hang in the closet, close the door of the closet, to go over to a wash stand, pour some water in a bowl, take off my shirt, and then I'm supposed to splash water on my face and take a towel and blot it off, or blot it off, and then put the shirt back on. Well, my shirt's got the sheriff's badge on it. So I'm standing there waiting for them to get everything set, the lighting and everything, and they're taking the shot to where they're shooting I'm facing the mirror, shooting my reflection in the mirror. So while they were fooling around, I'm standing there bare-chested. I get a piece of black tape off the camera, just big enough, put it on my chest, right about where that star would be. And I pinned the star on that piece of tape on my bare chest. And guys are watching me, kind of smiling. And the director says, all right, let's shoot this one. And the camera action, and I'm watching him out of the corner of my eye, and he's got this quizzical look on his face. Finally, he says, cut, and he starts laughing. Well, everybody had a good laugh. And some people would think, well, you're wasting time and money. Not really. We're saving time and money. And so a little later on, I've got to put the shirt back on, which I do, and then I go to the closet, to open the closet to get my coat out and put it back on. And when I do, we had a script girl, and everybody loved her. She was just a real sweetheart. But she was short and just about as wide as she was tall. And the director had put her in the closet. When I opened the closet door, she ran and threw her arms around me and said, darling. I didn't expect it, of course, but that was the director that did that. But, too much of that, of course, would then have an opposite effect, would be a waste of time and money. But we would do things like that now and then just to re-energize everybody. And it really worked.
Did you have time to rehearse at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we would rehearse scenes, especially if they were fight scenes. We'd have it all laid out as who's going to do what to whom and how we were going to wind up. And, of course, we would rehearse dialogue scenes until, we felt okay with them. Sometimes, someone would say, I don't really feel comfortable with this word. Can I change it to so-and-so or whatever? I, on the other hand, would always read the scripts ahead of time, and when I found stuff that didn't feel good to me, I would change it. And then I'd show the changes to the director or whatever, and if they could show me where there was a better way to do it, then I'd go along with that. But most of the time, they went along with it. And because I wanted those shows to be as good as I could possibly make them. And one thing I wanted them to be was believable. And I'd look for holes in the script. Maybe if somebody's shooting 8 or 9 times with a 6-shooter without reloading, things like that. But then the cutter can also
make it work.
You see a thing later, and it's too late to do anything about it. But I was trying to make them as good as I possibly could.
Did you ever improvise on the set, or did you work out the script issues before you started
yeah,
shooting?
there were times we had to improvise. And if we could find a better way to do it. And I got along good with my directors. And they usually would go along with me.
When Cheyenne first went on the air in the mid-'50s, was there any other show like it really on the air? It was the first hour Western, and it was...
Well, there was Gunsmoke, which was the half-hour program. And then the other show with... oh my goodness, can't think of his name right now. Hugh O'Brien.
Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp. And that was a half hour. And I had a big advantage there as well, because it hurts a show if you don't have time to develop your characters. I had more time to develop, or we had more time to develop the characters in the show, and they come more alive. They're more real. They're, if the guy's a bad guy, the audience has had time to see that he's the bad guy. And if you don't have time to develop that, it can hurt a show.
The show was thought of as an adult Western. I think the hour
I tried to make it as that. That's what I wanted it to be, because the kids are going to like it anyway. And I didn't, I didn't want to do a kiddie Western, because I could do an adult Western, the kids would like it as well. And they did.
Did you anticipate the popularity when you started doing Cheyenne?
No, not really, because this was all very, very new to me. The business was new to me. Becoming an actor was new to me. Working with a lot of other actors and actresses was completely new to me. And I'd come to work and find out I was going to be working with Jack Elam, or working with Big Boy Williams, or John Carradine, or some of these people that I'd held in high esteem. And I felt very privileged.
Cheyenne was right at the beginning of the Western genre in television, and at one point there were, I think, a couple of dozen shows on in the late 50s into the 60s. Did you see that coming, that this would be kind of really the beginning of that popular genre? That was one of the most popular genres in television.
No, I didn't.
What did you think about it as it started to unfold?
I think when they first began to send me out to various functions and so on, and I'd be in a plane looking down, and then I saw all those houses with all those antennas on them, and it began to dawn on me, a lot of those people down there are watching your show. And when I thought of how many, this is only one town, what about all those other towns? Then I began to become aware of how many people were watching the show, probably.
Do you think a Western is a good format to tell stories that have impact on people who are obviously a century past that, or maybe half a century or so?
I think so. I think the Western is a good format because it's very indicative of what made this country. Those people, the ranchers and the loggers and the miners and the railroad builders and all those people that it took to make this country what it is today, were indicative of what made this country. And they're the kind of people, I think, they're the only kind of people that are going to solve some of the problems that we have today. And I think the Western was very indicative of the what was it, the lady who wrote the book, Match My Mountains? And that would include the mountain men, of course, who were very important. But these are all people that helped build the West, whether it was the Yellowstone Kellys who discovered Yellowstone, or whether it was a lot of the other well-known mountain men or adventurers or cowboys or whomever. They weren't afraid to go out and try to build a railroad or try to start a lumber camp or to take a herd 1,000 miles to somewhere. And I think that's why people like the Westerns, because in those days people had a lot more freedom. And if somebody didn't treat them right, so maybe they'd wind up getting in a fight, but nobody went to jail unless somebody got killed. And those were the days when we didn't have all the restrictions and all the rules and regulations that in many ways interfere today with people doing great things.
Who were the producers who were the showrunners back then on Cheyenne?
Well, of course, Jack Warner was the guy that ran the studio. Bill Orr was the next guy down the list, I think, in charge of television. And, of course, he had a lot of people working with him, the Solivianos, and Steve Trilling was a wonderful, wonderful guy. I don't know if he's still alive or not. But
how about the producers that were directly on the show?
It would have been Bert Dunn, Art Silver. There's a couple others, I can't think of their name right now.
Was Roy Huggins involved?
Roy Huggins tried to direct one Cheyenne, but it just wasn't his thing. But he was a fantastic writer. And his wife, Adele something, did a number of the Cheyennes. But yeah, he did produce some of the Cheyennes. And I think Roy, before he died, wrote over, 250 scripts. Not all Cheyennes, of course.
What was your relationship like with Huggins, Roy Huggins?
It was a good relationship. I had a lot of respect for him, and we got along great.
And Harry Foster, was he a producer?
He was the first one. Now that it's funny, I had forgotten his name. He was the first one, and he didn't have much faith in Cheyenne making it.
Who are some of your favorite directors on Cheyenne?
Well, Richard Barrett directed the first Cheyenne, and he also directed the last one. And I did a lot of them with Leslie Martinson. I did a lot of them with, we called him Roland Sholem. I'm trying to think of his first name. But he would, got such a kick out of him. We'd do a scene, and if it was okay, he would always slap his leg like that, and he'd say, "Cut, print!" And they called him Roland Sholem. I can't think of his first name, though.
Did you have a favorite director that you like to work with?
Yeah, I enjoyed working with Richard. I enjoyed working with Les. There wasn't really anybody I didn't enjoy working with.
How much of the show was shot on location versus on like the back lot or in
Not too many. Not too many. Most of them were shot on the back lot. I can remember when we went on and they were doing Mavericks and Lawman and Sugarfoot and Bronco, and Wade Preston was doing Colt 45, and one day I think there was either 4 or 5 shows trying to shoot on the back lot. And I know we were doing a scene where we're supposed to be burying a guy, and everybody's the preacher's giving the eulogy, and everybody's trying to look sad, and here comes a bunch of Indians being chased by a bunch of Indians on Jim Garner's show. And of course that ruined the shot for us. And I think that the 2 directors almost got in a fist fight as to who was going to shoot next. But that was a busy day on the back lot.
Did you watch any of those other westerns that were on the air in the late 50s when you were on the air?
I didn't have time to.
When you shot the show, did you shoot Monday through Friday, or did you also shoot on Saturday?
Well, when we first started shooting them, we did, and then I think, I guess SAG passed a ruling that you couldn't, you could only work on Saturdays if you were out on a location somewhere.
Did you ever work with Hal Needham, who was a stuntman who became a director?
Well, I worked with Hal a lot of times.
And what do you remember about him?
Oh, he was good at what he did. Evidently, he was good, not only a good stuntman, but he was, they'd send him out to do a second, what did they call him? Anyhow, they'd be a part of the script, and they'd send him out with some cameramen and whatever, and he would shoot that himself.
Oh, second unit director?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And but he also did a lot of stunt work.
What did you do? What did you do to keep in shape?
Well, that was another bone of contention that I had with them. What they would do, being under contract, they didn't have to pay me overtime. So all the other actors in the story, they would get all their close-ups, which they'd usually do at the end of the day, if it was, on the same set. They would get all their close-ups first, and I'd have to be there, of course, to do the dialogue with them. Now they'd send them home, so I didn't have to pay them overtime. And now I was left, and I was either the script girl or an assistant director who would read the part of the actors that had gone home for me to react to. But it also put me home a lot later at night, to where I didn't have a chance to work out, and a lot of times didn't have a chance to eat supper with my family. And I begged them. I said, I can't go on like this. I need time to work out and keep myself in shape. It's one of the reasons you want me to do the Cheyennes, is, so I'll look good and I can handle myself well. And if you don't give me time to work out, that's going to go by the boards. And I finally came to the realization that they weren't going to do that. And so I decided I was going to give them 10 hours a day. And, starting at 7 in the morning and not counting the lunch hour, I give them 10 hours. And I told the assistant director one day, I said, this is what I'm going to do. You tell the director and whatever, but tomorrow, after 10 hours, I'm going home. And tomorrow came, and my time to go home came, and so I packed up my little case with my script and all, and headed for the door. And the assistant director said, hey, Clint, where are you going? You're in the next shot. I said, no, I'm not. I said, you forgot what I told you yesterday, and I headed for the door. And then here comes the director, same thing. Got outside, and I'm heading for my car, and here comes Bill Orr running down the street. Clint, what are you doing? Where are you going? I said, I'm going home. And anyhow, I explained to him, I told your assistant director, I said, you people haven't got sense enough to take care of a commodity that's making you a lot of money, so I'm going to do it for you. and I'm going to do it for my own sake as well. And you're going to have to keep some of those other people here and pay them overtime, and I'm going home at a decent hour where I can eat with my family, and I got a chance to work out, because I worked out a lot on the set. If I wasn't in a scene or whatever, I'd lift lamp stands without the lamp on them, of course, and like I would a barbell. And I'd use the lead weights off the big boom trucks, and I'd use apple boxes to do dips on, and I'd work with whatever I had to work out with. Now they did have a little gym that had a barbell and a couple of different sets of dumbbells, and a rope to climb, and one or two other things. That was it. Now they've got a full-blown gym there that is fantastic. But that was one of the problems we had. I just took the bull by the horns, and once I did it, they kept the other people on after I put in my 10 hours, and everything was fine.
Well, but then you left the show, right? At some point,
that was
later.
That was later, and
Okay.
that was when I found out that I had chances to do shows with some big names like Sophia Loren, and I found out, I was told much later that when she did Showboat, she went to Warner's and wanted me to play the part that Cary Grant did. And although he did a fantastic job, and he was a fantastic actor, but when I found that out, it made me angry, because Jim Garner was doing pictures with a lot of big names, independent of Warner Brothers. And
so what did you say to them, or how did you tell them?
Well, I just said I want to do more features, and if I get it, if something comes up, I get a chance to do something outside of Warner Brothers, I'd like to be able to do it. And I didn't ask for more money. A lot of people thought I did. I didn't. I probably should have, or probably could have got it. But anyhow, I was called up to Jack Warner's office, and Bill Warner was there, and I got a kick out of Jack. I liked Jack. I always liked him. And but he started in with, "Now, Clint, my boy, we have big plans for you. You have patience, He said, you don't want to muddle things up," and so on and so forth. And I said, I want to do feature pictures when I'm not doing Cheyennes, and I want to do fewer Cheyennes. I told him that, because I was doing 26. And then they changed from that. He said, "Listen, you're under contract to us. You'll do what you're told. And I don't want to hear any more arguments about it, blah, blah, blah." I said, "I'll just go gold mining for a while." And he said, anyhow, he said, "You won't be able to work anywhere else." And I said, okay. And I walked out the door, and as I'm walking down the hall, Jack's saying, you'll show up for work, blah, blah. And I said, "No, I won't." And that's how we ended it. Well, he went on to France, which he usually did in the summer for his vacation. He got hit by that coal truck and put in a hospital. I don't know, it was 2 or 3 months. And I didn't count on that. I didn't figure on that. So anyhow, finally he had Steve Trilling contact me. We got together and we ironed it out. And I went back to work. Now I was only going to do 16. Of course, while I was gone, they tried to put Ty Hardin in there as Cheyenne, but people wouldn't have it.
But his character's name was Bronco, right?
Yeah.
Bronco Lane?
Yeah. Well, that's when he started doing his own show rather than doing Cheyenne. That's what they brought him in for, was to take my place and do Cheyenne.
When you had the dispute where you met with Jack Warner, was this at the end of a season, like end of season 3 or 4? Or was it during?
Yeah, yeah, it was.
And then they brought him in at the beginning of the next season, Ty Harden?
I guess that was it, yeah.
Because at some point they changed the name of the show from Cheyenne to The Cheyenne
The
Show.
Cheyenne Show, yeah.
And your credit was still on it.
Yeah.
But you weren't in it, right?
But the people wrote in, and boy, they didn't want anybody else for Cheyenne, which was certainly to my benefit. But by then, I was ready to go back to work. And
did you tell them, or did they call you?
no, they called me. Steve Trilling called me, and Steve was a wonderful guy, really nice man, and one of Jack Warner's right-hand men. I really didn't want to fight with him. I just, there's certain things I felt I was entitled to, and I found out that if I didn't stand up for myself and fight for it, I wouldn't get it. And so that's what I did.
And then what do they do with Ty Harden?
They gave him his own show, Bronco.
So you and Ty Harden never acted together in Cheyenne, is that right? He was totally separate?
Ty might have done one Cheyenne with me.
Okay.
I think he probably did.
So what was the reaction?
I just don't remember.
How did the acting community react? How did the industry react when you left the show?
Well, I think there were people that didn't approve of what I did, and then there were people that thought it was great.
Did SAG or the acting union? You were in SAG, I assume. Did they?
Oh no.
No. Did they back you, or did the acting unions think you did the right thing?
No, I didn't. Never occurred to me to ask them to back me up.
So they weren't involved at all.
No.
How were you treated? When you left the show, how were you generally treated?
Well, there's always some of those people that when everything's going great, they're for you and they're with you, and when things aren't going so great, they disappear in the woodwork. But that's life and that's people.
You said that you were able to negotiate fewer shows.
Yeah.
Did they also let you go do some of those features you wanted to do?
No, any features I did at that time, I did for Warner's.
Okay, so I understand. So you did some features, but they had to be Warner Brothers productions, right?
I think that's when I did Gold of the Seven Saints. I'm not sure. I think I did Fort Dobbs and Yellowstone Kelly, and then I did Gold of the Seven Saints when I came back, I think.
When you left the show, did you think it might end?
Yeah, I knew it could.
And when you came back to the show, how were you treated on the set, by the crew?
Oh, they were all glad to see me.
Did you I think you were quoted as saying, "I feel like a caged tiger" at some point. Was that during that time?
I don't remember. I don't remember saying that.
How did you feel? Did you feel that way, or that you were?
At what point?
Well, I guess it would have been before you left, because it sounds like it kind of built to a head over time.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
It did. The thing that I began to realize, there were times when I was sick, but I worked. There were times when I had the flu, and I worked. I did a show with Les Martinson, and in fact, Dennis Hopper was in that show. And anyhow, the thing of the show was a bunch of people in a stagecoach, and they wound up in a little cabin somewhere where the coach was running from the ends, and it stopped there, and we're all in there trapped by the ends. And in the end, finally becomes a thing between me and the end chief of, I called him a coward if he wasn't willing to fight me, that he was hiding behind his men. And I deliberately tried to goad him into a fight. What I did know is that he would pick he knew where there was some quicksand, and he picked the quicksand, and they had to duplicate that on one of the stages where they had an elevator and a pit where they could raise you and lower you.
Clint, we're gonna have to change tape. Okay, let's finish this right after this.